No one in Cottonwood ever forgot the winter auction fair. Not after the year Evelyn Carter walked through the biting wind. Her coat buttoned up tight, hair tucked into a faded blue scarf. She moved with the stubborn, steady pace of someone who'd spent a lifetime pushing back against things that wanted to break her. Hard seasons, bad crops, ugly whispers. The auction always drew a crowd, but this year the air had a different kind of buzz, like everyone could sense something unusual was about to unfold. Evelyn paused at the edge of the paddocks, her boots sinking into the half-frozen mud. The smell of hay and old wood drifted on the air, but another scent lingered too: fear and maybe a little hope. Laughter crackled among the clusters of townsfolk, some bundled up in layers, others holding paper cups of weak coffee, steam rising in gray wisps. But what held their attention was not the sturdy young quarter horse kicking up dust in the auction pen, nor the brown mare with the glossy mane. Instead, it was the pitiful sight standing at the very end. A horse so thin you could see every rib, his coat a ragged mess of chestnut and old scars, his eyes huge and uncertain under a tangled forelock. "That's Rusty," someone sneered, not even bothering to lower their voice. "More like ready for the glue factory if you ask me." A wave of laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone even pretended to place a bet, shaking imaginary dice. $5 says the old gal tries to buy that sack of bones. Evelyn ignored them, but her heart drummed in her chest. She stepped closer, boots crunching on stray ice. The horse met her eyes for a brief, haunting second, and something old and stubborn inside her refused to look away. She saw not just the injuries, fresh cuts, old wounds, swollen knees, but also the wild pulse of life still flickering behind those eyes. She knew that look. She'd seen it in the mirror on nights when loneliness gnawed at her, when folks in town called her weird or not right in the head for living out on the farm by herself. The auctioneer, a barrel-chested man in a frayed vest, pounded his gavel and called out, "Next up, lot 22. Rusty, 9-year-old gelding, abandoned, no papers, comes as is." The crowd shifted restlessly. A teenager in a red jacket jeered, "Might as well throw him in for free." Evelyn cleared her throat, voice strong. "I'd like to start the bidding. $50? The air tensed. Even the auctioneer hesitated. "Ma'am, you heard he's—" $50, she said again, chin high, gaze unwavering. For a moment, the only sound was the crows circling overhead. Then laughter broke out in pockets, louder this time, some voices downright mean. Bets changed hands in the back. A man elbowed his buddy. "She's crazy, always was, always will be." The bidding was half-hearted. A boy yelled, "55!" but he was grinning at his friends. Another woman added, "60, just to keep him out of my flower beds." But every time someone tried to drive up the price, Evelyn met them with a quiet, steady counter. 65, 70, 75. The auctioneer's eyebrows kept climbing higher, his gavel wavering. A chill gust of wind swept across the pen, sending shivers through everyone. But Evelyn stood firm. The crowd grew meaner, their taunts sharper. Betting Rusty wouldn't survive a week. Betting Evelyn would give up just like she always should have. She heard snatches. "Wasting her savings. She's a joke. Just wants attention." But none of it reached her. Only Rusty, shivering but upright, his tail flicking nervously, seemed to matter. The final bid. $80, Evelyn called, voice clear and unafraid. The auctioneer looked to the crowd, but nobody wanted to outbid her. Maybe they just wanted to see her fail. The gavel came down with a dull thud. "Sold to Miss Carter. Godspeed to you both." A few clapped. Most just shook their heads. As Evelyn walked forward, a rock sailed past her boot. Some kid thinking it was funny. She didn't flinch, just unclipped the lead rope herself, meeting Rusty's gaze. He was shaking, nostrils flaring, but Evelyn spoke softly. "Come on, boy. We're going home." It took nearly 10 minutes to coax Rusty into the trailer. The crowd was relentless. Some booed. A man muttered, "She's just showing off." But an old woman near the fence watched in silence, eyes sharp and thoughtful. Halfway through loading, Rusty tried to bolt, rearing up and nearly toppling over. Evelyn's heart pounded. She pictured him collapsing right there, ending the story before it even began. But she planted her boots, gripped the rope tighter, and waited, breathing slow and steady until the horse's panic gave way to confusion, then surrender. At last, Rusty stepped into the trailer, trembling but standing. The drive home was tense. Frost began to creep across the windshield, the world outside fading into blue-gray dusk. Every bump in the road made Evelyn worry that Rusty might collapse. But she kept her eyes on the road and her mind on the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she could give him the second chance no one else believed he deserved. As she pulled up to Cottonwood Farm, the barn lights glowed like distant beacons. She opened the trailer slowly, whispering to Rusty as she led him into a stall bedded with clean straw. He collapsed, breathing hard, and Evelyn sank to her knees beside him, tears burning her eyes. "You're safe now," she whispered, voice steady. "You're safe." Outside, the wind howled. Somewhere in the darkness, the town's laughter still echoed. But inside the barn, there was only the quiet and the first fragile thread of hope stretching between a broken horse and a woman the world had never quite understood. The night swallowed Cottonwood Farm, blanketing the old wooden fences and frosted fields in a hush that felt almost sacred. Inside the barn, a single bulb glowed above Rusty's stall, painting golden circles on straw and shadows on Evelyn's tired face. She had pulled a camp chair close, refusing to go inside the house, unwilling to leave Rusty even for a minute. Each breath the horse took sounded like it had to fight through a mountain of pain. His sides heaved, his eyes dull and glassy. Evelyn had tended animals her whole life, but none had ever seemed so close to the edge. She worked quietly through the night, cleaning wounds, rubbing ointment into cracked skin, whispering encouragement, spooning warm mash into a battered old feed bucket. Rusty barely lifted his head. His entire body shuddered with every movement, his legs buckling when he tried to stand. At one point, he let out a soft, broken whinny, a sound so raw it nearly shattered her. Wind battered the barn. In the distance, the faint clanging of a gate meant the neighbors had arrived, drawn by gossip and the promise of spectacle. Headlights slashed across the darkness, and Evelyn could hear the crunch of tires on gravel, the sound of boots stomping through slush. She didn't have to look to know who it was. Half the town, eager to watch her fail. A harsh laugh echoed outside, followed by a mocking voice. "Place your bets, folks. How long you think before that nag drops dead?" Another answered, "Won't last the week. Not with old Evelyn trying to play hero." More laughter, crueler this time. The barn door creaked open, letting in a gust of cold air and a group of faces, neighbors, all bundled up and grinning, eager for a show. Anna, the neighbor's youngest, trailed behind, her eyes big with worry. Evelyn stood, body aching, voice steady. This is private property. If you're not here to help, you can leave." A man spat on the ground. "We're just curious if you need a shovel, Evelyn." A ripple of nervous giggles swept the group, but Anna stepped forward, tugging her father's sleeve. "Leave her alone," she whispered, but he shrugged her off. The crowd lingered, pressed against the fence, pointing, whispering, watching every movement. Evelyn ignored them, focusing on Rusty, cleaning another scrape, whispering, "Easy now. You're all right." But anxiety gnawed at her. She'd spent her life surviving on stubbornness, but tonight felt different. The odds felt stacked too high. An hour dragged past. The neighbors eventually wandered off, disappointed that nothing dramatic had happened. Yet, only Anna lingered near the fence, arms folded tight, eyes following Evelyn's every move. Inside, the barn air grew cold as the night deepened. Rusty started to tremble violently, legs kicking against the straw. Breath coming in short, rattling bursts. Evelyn's heart leapt into her throat. She dropped to her knees, cupping the horse's head. "Stay with me, Rusty, please." He collapsed onto his side, legs jerking, eyes rolling white. Evelyn felt a primal panic rising, threatening to tear her apart. Tears stung her eyes. She grabbed an old blanket, covered his body, and rubbed his neck with desperate, shaking hands. The only sound was her own voice, hoarse and low. "Come on, boy. Don't you dare give up now. Not after we've come this far." Suddenly, Rusty's body went frighteningly still. For a heartbeat, Evelyn thought she'd lost him. She pressed her face against his mane, silent prayers tumbling from her lips. Out of instinct, or pure stubbornness, she ran outside, grabbed a bucket, and filled it with warm water and a dash of molasses from her kitchen. Rushing back, she poured it slowly into Rusty's mouth, urging him, "Drink. Please, Rusty." "Just a little." Miraculously, the horse's tongue flicked out. He swallowed, then shuddered, letting out a long, ragged breath. Evelyn almost sobbed with relief. She repeated the process, coaxing him sip by sip, refusing to let exhaustion pull her under. Anna, unable to stay away, tiptoed closer and watched through a crack in the barn door, awe on her face. Outside, the neighborhood gossip was in full swing. Someone muttered, "She's lost her mind," while another placed a $5 bill in a crude betting pool on whether Rusty would last the week. But by dawn, the crowd had drifted away, the show not as dramatic as they'd hoped. Inside, Evelyn stayed up, sleep a distant memory. She kept her hand on Rusty's neck, feeling the faint thrum of life beneath battered skin. As the first gray light filtered through the cracks in the barn, Rusty stirred, managing to lift his head. His eyes met Evelyn's, and for a moment, she saw something spark, a flicker of trust, or maybe just the first fragile thread of hope. The barn door creaked open again. Anna stood there, clutching a thermos. She handed it to Evelyn shyly. "You should drink something. You look tired." Evelyn managed to smile, exhaustion etched deep in her features. "Thank you, Anna. I'll be all right." Anna lingered, glancing at Rusty. "Do you really think he can make it?" Evelyn squeezed the girl's shoulder gently. "Sometimes, when no one else believes, that's when you have to believe the most." That morning, word spread quickly. Evelyn Carter's miracle horse had made it through the night. Skeptics scoffed, but a hush of curiosity crept into their voices. Some said it was luck, others muttered that it wouldn't last. But Anna ran through the village, telling everyone how Evelyn had sat up all night, crying and praying and refusing to give up. Back at Cottonwood, Evelyn finally allowed herself a moment of rest, dozing in the straw while Rusty nibbled at hay. She didn't notice the neighbors peeking from the fence, or the way the town's gossip had turned from laughter to uneasy fascination. But in that quiet dawn, with hope barely flickering, Evelyn Carter knew she'd passed the first test. Whatever came next, she and Rusty would face it together, against all odds. After that brutal night, a delicate hush settled over Cottonwood Farm, as if the land itself was holding its breath to see what would become of Evelyn's gamble. For the first time in months, Evelyn opened her eyes to a pale strip of morning sunlight crawling across the barn floor. She blinked away sleep, every muscle aching, and glanced at Rusty's stall, heart pounding with the fear she'd held onto all night. But there he was, the horse everyone had written off, lying in the straw with his head up, chewing slowly at a mouthful of hay. Evelyn let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding, then stood, joints protesting, and poured a fresh bucket of water for him. "Morning, Rusty," she said, her voice a mix of relief and wonder. "You're still with us?" The next few days unfolded at a pace Evelyn had almost forgotten. Quiet, careful, slow. Gone were the shouts and laughter of the auction crowd. Gone, too, were the neighbors, at least for now. Instead, there was only the rhythmic sound of the farm, the creak of old boards, the low cooing of pigeons in the rafters, and the cautious shuffle of Rusty's hooves as he tried, tentatively, to stand and walk. He was still weak, bones jutting under skin, every step a tremor of uncertainty. But Evelyn was there for everyone. She cleaned his wounds, changed his bandages, and mixed up steaming mash that she spooned into his bucket, coaxing him to eat. Sometimes he refused, turning his head away, and she would sigh, patience thinning, then try again an hour later. She learned the art of waiting, of small encouragements, of celebrating the little victories. One extra bite, a stronger flick of the tail, the moment Rusty managed to stand without wobbling. Anna came by every day after school, sneaking through the gate despite her parents' warnings. At first, she hovered near the barn door, too shy to come close. But Evelyn noticed, and one afternoon she called out, "If you want, Anna, you can help me feed him. He could use all the friends he can get." Anna's face lit up, and she hurried over, eyes wide with curiosity and worry. She watched as Evelyn prepared the warm mash, carefully measuring out oats, bran, and chopped apples. "He looks better today," Anna said softly, peering through the slats at Rusty. "He's a fighter," Evelyn replied, her hands never stopping. "Sometimes that's all you need to get through, just enough fight left to try one more time." Anna glanced at Evelyn. "Do you ever feel like giving up?" Evelyn paused, thinking. "Plenty of times," she admitted. "But if I gave up every time someone expected me to, I'd have nothing left. Rusty's the same way. As long as he wants to keep trying, I'll be right here." Anna helped scoop the mash into the bucket, then stood by while Evelyn held it up to Rusty's nose. For the first time, the horse took a hesitant bite, lips trembling, and chewed. Anna clapped her hands, unable to hide her excitement. "He's eating! He's really eating!" Evelyn smiled, a deep warmth blooming in her chest. For a few moments, the barn was filled with a new kind of hope, shy, unsteady, but growing stronger every day. As the week passed, small miracles stacked up. Rusty began to walk, first just a few steps, then all the way to the end of his stall. His eyes lost some of their haunted fear. The swelling in his legs eased. There were setbacks, of course, days when he wouldn't eat, when old wounds flared up. when his legs buckled and Evelyn's heart broke all over again. But each time, she dusted herself off and tried again. One afternoon, as the sky softened into the peach and lavender of early spring, Evelyn opened the stall and led Rusty out into the yard. The world outside was bigger and brighter than he remembered. He blinked in the sunlight, head drooping, but then took a shaky step forward. The wind ruffled his mane. Anna cheered quietly, and Evelyn stayed close, ready to catch him if he stumbled. "Take it slow, boy," she whispered. "We're not in any rush." Neighbors started to notice. Some watched from their kitchen windows. Others paused on their way to the mailbox, curiosity winning out over old judgment. Whispers spread about Evelyn's miracle horse, though most still rolled their eyes. But Evelyn didn't care. Each step Rusty took was for himself and for her, not for anyone else. That night, Anna asked Evelyn, "Do you think people will ever stop laughing at you?" Evelyn smiled, leaning back against the barn wall. "I don't know. Maybe. But their laughter doesn't matter as much as it used to. What matters is what you do, not what they say." Anna nodded, thoughtful. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Evelyn's heart softened. "Just be yourself, Anna. That's more than enough." By the end of the week, Rusty had managed to walk the length of the yard, eat his fill, and even nuzzle Anna's hand. Every time he took a step, Evelyn felt herself heal a little too. They were both learning what it meant to recover, to take slow steps toward something better. The bruises left by words and the scars left by pain didn't disappear overnight, but in the quiet, persistent work of care and patience, a new kind of hope grew, one that couldn't be easily shaken. And as night fell, with the stars bright over Cottonwood Farm, Evelyn whispered to Rusty, "We're not done yet." Not by a long shot. Rusty's ear flicked in response, as if he understood. Their journey was only beginning. Evelyn soon found herself weaving her days around Rusty's slow progress, her whole world shrinking to the barn, the paddock, and the little routines she created just for him. The chores she once completed without a second thought now carried new meaning. Each action became a small act of faith, a brushstroke of kindness she hoped would reach a frightened, broken horse. After the first rays of sun stretched over Cottonwood Farm, Evelyn would grab her worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird or a stack of old westerns, tucking them under her arm as she made her way to the barn. She'd settle herself just outside Rusty's stall, her back against a hay bale, and begin to read aloud. Her voice was gentle, low, and steady, filling the space with stories about courage and hope and lost souls who found their way home. At first, Rusty stood in the far corner, as if bracing for something bad. But Evelyn read on, day after day, chapter after chapter. Sometimes she'd sing, her voice cracked and untrained, but honest. Or she'd tell stories of her childhood, letting the sound of her laughter rise above the hush of the barn. She talked about the summers she spent riding bareback across wildflower meadows, about her mother's cornbread, about how she never fit in, how her choices always seemed to put her on the outside looking in. In the evenings, with the wind sighing through the rafters and dusk settling over the fields, Evelyn would simply sit, her hands folded in her lap, humming old lullabies. Sometimes she'd fall quiet, lost in thought. Memories pressed in around her, the times her family had shaken their heads at her stubbornness, the gossip that trailed her through every corner of the town. They'd called her strange, pitied her for living alone, whispered about her never marrying, never settling down. But Evelyn never let their words become her truth. One night, Anna found her like that, sitting with her legs tucked beneath her, face soft in the lantern glow. Anna hesitated at the door. "Can I stay for a little?" she asked. "Of course," Evelyn replied, patting the hay bale beside her. They sat together, listening to Rusty breathe, to the creak of wood as the old horse shifted his weight. Anna leaned her head against Evelyn's shoulder. "Do you ever get lonely?" she whispered. Evelyn smiled, looking at Rusty. "Sometimes, but I think everybody feels alone now and then. What matters is what you do with it." Anna nodded, tracing her finger through the dust. "I think Rusty is lonely too." Evelyn squeezed her hand. "We'll show him he's not alone anymore." That became their new mission, Anna and Evelyn side by side, building something that didn't have a name yet, but felt a lot like family. Day after day, Evelyn would extend her hand a little closer to Rusty's stall. She'd let her fingers rest on the gate, palm up, open and patient. She never rushed him, never forced a touch. Sometimes she'd talk to him softly, sharing pieces of her life. How her father wanted a son, how her mother wished she'd married a banker, how she'd chosen a life no one else understood. The trust grew slowly, like seeds in cold earth. Some mornings, Rusty inched a little closer. Other days, he'd stand frozen, unsure. But each evening, after Anna left and the stars hung bright above the farm, Evelyn would return to the barn, reading by lantern light, letting her words fill the night air. One blustery afternoon, a storm rolled in from the west, rattling the windows and sending rain hammering on the tin roof. Rusty's eyes went wide, and he started to pace, nostrils flaring. Evelyn stayed by his stall, talking him through it, telling him stories about wild horses and summer storms, about the time she once found shelter under a broken-down tractor when she was a girl. Slowly, Rusty's panic ebbed, replaced by a cautious curiosity. He took a step toward her, then another. Evelyn held her breath. She stretched her hand out, palm open. Rusty sniffed, then, for the first time, pressed his battered head against her fingers. A thrill of hope shot through her, a quiet triumph. "That's it, boy," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Anna arrived later, running through puddles, soaked but beaming when she saw the way Rusty now stood at the edge of his stall, looking for Evelyn. "He trusts you now," Anna said, awe in her voice. "It's a start," Evelyn replied, feeling the weight of all her lonely years start to lighten. As the days blurred together, their bond deepened. Evelyn stopped caring what the townsfolk said. Rumors still circled, whispers of Evelyn and her miracle horse, but she ignored them. Her focus was on Rusty and the new rituals they created, reading, singing, and sometimes just sitting together in silence, two creatures healing each other in the gentle light of forgiveness. One crisp morning, Rusty nuzzled her shoulder, letting Evelyn run her hand down his scarred neck without flinching. Anna cheered, and Evelyn's eyes filled with grateful tears. For the first time, Rusty truly let her in. For the first time, Evelyn realized she wasn't just saving a horse. She was learning how to save herself, too. And as the sun rose over Cottonwood Farm, spilling gold across the field, Evelyn whispered, "We've got each other now. That's more than enough." Night in Cottonwood Farm was supposed to bring peace, but ever since Rusty had started showing signs of recovery, the atmosphere shifted. The wind that once hummed a lullaby through the cottonwood trees now seemed to whisper warnings. Evelyn felt it in her bones, a tension hanging thick in the air. Even Rusty, usually calmed by her presence, paced nervously in his stall as dusk slipped across the yard. It wasn't just the usual gossip anymore. Word of Rusty's improvement had started to leak through the village. Some people were quietly impressed. Others grew more skeptical, almost angry, as if Evelyn's little miracle was a threat to their understanding of how the world worked. She must be cheating somehow, someone muttered at the feed store. No way that sack of bones is still standing. That evening, as Evelyn finished sweeping the barn, she heard footsteps crunching on the gravel outside. Her heart thumped. The barn's old windows caught the flicker of flashlight beams bouncing through the dark. She pulled her coat tight and stepped out onto the porch, her silhouette framed by the barn's yellow glow. A group of men lingered by the fence, their breath smoky in the cold air. She recognized them: Tommy Finch, Billy Reeves, and Eddie Cray, all known for their mean streaks and their love of a good dare. Billy tossed a rock from hand to hand, grinning. "Evening, Evelyn." She didn't answer. She could smell the beer on their breath even from the porch. "You fellas got business here?" she asked, keeping her voice flat. Tommy spat on the ground. Just wanted to see if the miracle horse was still upright. Evelyn stepped down, blocking their view of the barn. "It's late. Time to head home." Billy snickered. "We're just curious. That's all. Folks in town, they talk. Say you got some kind of magic out here. Witch stuff, maybe." Evelyn met his eyes, unflinching. "Magic's just hard work, and you boys wouldn't know much about that." A few of them grumbled, shifting their weight. Eddie drew back, tossing the rock. It clattered harmlessly against the side of Rusty's stall, but the horse spooked, crashing against the boards with a wild whinny. Evelyn rushed back inside, heart racing. Just in time to see Rusty kicking at the door in panic, sweat gleaming on his flanks. "Hey, stop that!" she shouted, voice sharp. But outside, the men only laughed, their shadows retreating down the driveway. Rusty's panic was contagious. He twisted, nearly slipping, and Evelyn tried to grab his halter, but his head whipped up and clipped her cheek, sending pain shooting through her face. She staggered back, hands up, but stayed with him, speaking softly as she could. "Easy, Rusty. Easy now." It took 10 minutes for Rusty to settle, chest heaving, eyes wild with terror. Evelyn's hands shook as she checked for injuries. Her cheek throbbed, and she could already feel a bruise forming. She wiped away a single tear, frustration mixing with the old ache of being an outsider. That night, sleep was impossible. Evelyn dragged an old chair into the barn and kept watch, one hand resting on Rusty's withers. She listened for every creak and whisper outside, determined not to let fear win. Somewhere, she heard Anna's voice from across the field, calling a gentle goodnight from her window, reminding Evelyn that not everyone in town was against her. The next morning, Anna rushed over before school, finding Evelyn with a swollen cheek but a determined look in her eye. "Did something happen?" Anna whispered, eyes wide. Evelyn hesitated, not wanting to worry her, but finally nodded. "Just some fools playing pranks," she said, brushing it off. "Nothing I can't handle." Anna's face darkened with anger. "It's not right. You're just trying to help Rusty. Why do they hate you so much?" Evelyn crouched to her level, tucking a loose strand of hair behind Anna's ear. "Sometimes people are scared of what they don't understand. Or maybe they just don't want to see someone else succeed. But that's their problem, not ours." Word of the night's incident spread fast. Some adults shook their heads, muttering about troublemakers, but others shrugged. She brought it on herself. A few children from the neighborhood started hanging around the fence more often, sneaking peeks at Rusty, whispering that maybe there was something special about Evelyn after all. Some even started to admire her courage, her patience, the way she didn't lash out or give up, even when things got tough. Anna began bringing her friends after school. They watched as Evelyn calmed Rusty, tending his wounds with gentle hands, never once raising her voice. Even when Rusty shied away, spooked by shadows or loud noises, Evelyn would stand by his side, her calm presence like a shield. Her patience in the face of everything made Anna's friends look at her with new eyes. Rumors swirled. Some called it Evelyn's miracle. Others insisted she was just stubborn or lucky. But gradually, a subtle shift began. Where there was once only scorn, a seed of respect started to grow. Even some of the adults who had doubted her now found themselves quietly rooting for her and Rusty. But Evelyn didn't care about the rumors. All that mattered was Rusty, his healing, his trust, the way his eyes now followed her with something like hope. She spoke to him softly, her voice the one constant in his world. "We're not going to let them win, are we, boy?" she'd say as she brushed his mane. Each day, Rusty grew stronger, and so did Evelyn's resolve. The setbacks only made her more patient, more gentle, more determined to prove that kindness could outlast cruelty. Anna and the other children watched, learning from her not just how to care for a horse, but how to stand tall when the world wanted you to shrink. And through it all, the legend of Evelyn and Rusty began to take root, not just as a story of survival, but as a testament to the power of faith, forgiveness, and quiet, stubborn hope. Evelyn knew something had to change. The winter air had begun to soften, and the fields around Cottonwood Farm showed hints of green beneath the patchy snow. Rusty, though still fragile, was stronger than he had ever been in her care. His wounds were healing. His coat shone a little brighter, and his eyes were clearer, less haunted. Every morning, Evelyn watched him pace the paddock, tail flicking, ears perked, sometimes even trotting a few awkward steps before stopping to catch his breath. Yet for all his progress, Rusty was still trapped. The barn and small fenced yard had become his whole world, a place of safety but also a kind of prison. The townsfolk's scorn had begun to fade into curiosity, but whispers of doubt still trailed Evelyn wherever she went. She knew the only way forward was to take a risk, one that might undo all the progress they had made or prove once and for all that Rusty's spirit could not be broken. That morning, after a night of restless sleep, Evelyn stood at the edge of the paddock, gazing out over the wide, open pasture that bordered her property. Frost still rimmed the grass, sparkling beneath the rising sun. She had avoided this moment, afraid that if Rusty panicked, he would injure himself, or worse, run off and never return. But as she watched him that day, something clicked in her heart. The time had come to trust, truly trust, in the bond they'd built. She saddled Rusty with just a simple halter, not even bothering with a bit or saddle, wanting to give him every chance to feel free. Anna was there, bouncing nervously at the fence. "Are you sure he's ready?" Anna asked, worry etching lines into her young face. Evelyn nodded. "He's got to learn the world's bigger than these four walls. We both do." A few neighbors, drawn by the rumor that Evelyn was finally letting Rusty loose, gathered at the edge of the property, leaning over the fence, muttering to each other. Some came out of concern, others just to say, "I told you so," if things went wrong. Evelyn opened the gate, heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear herself think. She led Rusty into the open field, the cold wind swirling around them, birds scattering from the tall grass. For a moment, Rusty froze, hooves digging into the earth, muscles tensed for flight. "It's okay," Evelyn murmured, rubbing his neck. "This is your chance, Rusty. Go on now. See what you can do." She let the lead rope drop. At first, Rusty just stood there, nostrils flaring, uncertain. Then, all at once, instinct kicked in. He broke into a stumbling trot, then a wild, unsteady gallop, his head tossing, tail flying out behind him. The townsfolk gasped. Anna clutched the fence, eyes wide. For a terrifying heartbeat, Evelyn thought he might disappear into the trees and never look back. But then, halfway across the field, Rusty stopped. He spun around, breath fogging in the morning air. He looked back at Evelyn, truly looked, and then slowly, he started toward her. He walked, then trotted, then broke into a smooth canter that was almost graceful despite his lingering limp. Evelyn's breath caught. Anna let out a shout of pure, wild joy. "He's coming back! He's coming back!" The neighbors who'd gathered to watch waited, some with hands over their mouths. Rusty circled Evelyn once, twice, then pressed his head against her shoulder, seeking comfort, seeking home. It was a moment that felt like magic, not just to Evelyn, but to everyone watching. The tension that had held the community in its grip for so long seemed to break. Anna ran back to the village, dragging her friends and parents, breathless with excitement. "You have to come see. He came back. He really came back." By noon, a crowd had gathered at the fence, more than Evelyn had ever seen on her land at once. Children pointed in awe, some adults blinked away tears, and a few men who had once thrown rocks now hung back in silence, unable to find the words. Rumors shifted from ridicule to wonder. Some whispered that it was luck, but others admitted it was something more. Something about trust, about patience, about believing in the impossible. Evelyn knelt in the grass, arms wrapped around Rusty's neck. She didn't care about the crowd, or the rumors, or the memories of cold nights spent fighting back fear and doubt. In that moment, all that mattered was the warm, living horse pressing into her side, and the hope that now bloomed between them. Later, as the sun began to dip low and the crowd drifted away, Anna stayed behind, eyes shining. "You did it, Evelyn. You both did." Evelyn brushed a strand of hair from her face, smiling tiredly. "No, Anna. Rusty did it. I just believed he could." Anna grinned, hugging her tight. "Everyone's going to talk about this. Maybe they'll stop being so mean now." Evelyn looked toward the distant hills, thoughtful. People change slowly, but sometimes all it takes is one moment, one leap of faith. As evening fell, Rusty stood tall and proud beside her, no longer the broken, battered animal she'd brought home from the auction. He was still healing, still learning, but he was free. And so was she. That night, as Evelyn closed the barn, she looked back at the empty pasture, silvered by moonlight, and felt something she hadn't known in years. Peace. The world was still uncertain, still full of risk, but now she believed in the power of second chances, not just for Rusty, but for herself and everyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. Their turning point had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. Spring came to Cottonwood Farm on a morning scented with dew and wildflowers, the fields painted in soft gold and green. Rusty had grown stronger with each passing day. His gait, though not perfect, was no longer hesitant. He could canter the length of the pasture, mane and tail streaming, and when Evelyn called, he came without fear. The transformation was so profound that even the most skeptical neighbors began to watch with a mix of disbelief and reluctant admiration. Evelyn could feel it too, the change in the air, in herself. Where once she'd gone about her chores, bracing for judgment, now she worked with her head high. But she knew Rusty's true test still lay ahead. He had learned to trust her on the ground, but the memory of pain and panic that came with carrying a rider might prove harder to erase. One Saturday, Evelyn woke before dawn, nerves and excitement swirling in her stomach. She prepared Rusty's breakfast, brushing his coat until it gleamed, checking every old scar, every once tender spot. Anna arrived just as the sun broke over the horizon, carrying a battered leather saddle and bridle. She looked at Evelyn, eyes wide. "Are you really going to try today?" Evelyn smiled, more confident than she felt. "He's ready. We're ready. Let's see what happens." Word had spread in the village. Evelyn Carter was going to ride her miracle horse. By mid-morning, a crowd had gathered along the fence. Families in Sunday best, ranchers with folded arms, even Tommy Finch and Billy Reeves, whose stone-throwing had given way to silent watching. Some still whispered that disaster was certain, that the horse would throw her, that Evelyn was tempting fate. Others just watched, quiet, breath held. Evelyn led Rusty into the paddock, pausing in the sunlight, the weight of every watching eye heavy on her shoulders. She rested her palm against Rusty's neck, feeling his muscles twitch under her touch. She spoke to him in the same calm, steady tone she'd used since the first day. "Easy, boy. Just like we practiced. I'm right here." She slipped the bridle over his head. He flinched, eyes wide, but didn't bolt. Anna offered the saddle and Evelyn moved slowly, letting Rusty sniff the worn leather, running her hands along his back before easing the saddle into place. For a moment, Rusty tensed, whole body rigid, memories threatening to overwhelm him. Evelyn whispered, "It's okay. It's just me." She tightened the girth with patient hands. Rusty danced sideways, hooves digging ruts in the soft dirt. The crowd murmured, shifting anxiously. Evelyn held her ground, never raising her voice, never forcing him. Just waiting. Minutes ticked by as the world shrank to a quiet struggle. One woman, one horse, and the wall between them built from years of fear and pain. Then slowly, Rusty stilled. He lowered his head, the wildness in his eyes replaced by a question. Evelyn reached up, stroking his neck, her heart full. "That's it, boy. We're all right." With a deep breath, she stepped to his side, slid her foot into the stirrup, and swung into the saddle. The crowd gasped as Rusty shivered. Every muscle coiled. For a terrifying second, Evelyn thought he would bolt or rear or collapse. Instead, Rusty stood trembling beneath her, eyes darting from the people at the fence to Anna's encouraging smile. Evelyn gathered the reins, as light as she dared, and squeezed gently with her legs. Rusty took a step, then another. The paddock was utterly silent. The only sound, the soft thud of hooves on earth. Evelyn rode him in a slow, wide circle, never rushing, her body loose and steady. Rusty's ears flicked back and forth, his breath coming in short bursts, but he kept going, each step more certain than the last. The children along the fence broke into applause. Anna jumped up and down, beaming with pride. The adults followed suit, some hesitantly, others with genuine joy. Even Tommy and Billy watched, speechless, as Evelyn rode Rusty around and around, sunlight painting their shadows across the grass. After a few minutes, Evelyn halted Rusty in the middle of the paddock. She slid from the saddle and wrapped her arms around his neck, her face pressed into his mane. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away, grinning at Anna and the crowd. Anna ran into the paddock, breathless. "You did it! He did it! I knew you could!" Evelyn laughed, her voice thick. "No, Anna. We did it. All of us." Word spread through the village before the dust had even settled. People who had never set foot on Cottonwood Farm came to see Rusty, to touch his neck, to ask Evelyn how she'd done it. Some brought gifts, bags of oats, apple treats, even new brushes and blankets. Others simply stood at the fence, hats in hand, faces open and awestruck. That evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Evelyn saddled Rusty one more time. She rode him slowly across the pasture, the fading light turning everything to gold. Anna ran alongside, laughing, and children trailed after them, their voices echoing in the stillness. Neighbors watched from their porches, some wiping away tears. Even the most stubborn skeptics could not deny what they'd witnessed. A miracle made not of magic, but of patience, love, and relentless hope. As the last rays of sun disappeared and the farm fell quiet, Evelyn dismounted and led Rusty into the barn. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "Thank you, Rusty, for trusting me, for teaching me to trust again." Outside, the world kept spinning, gossip, doubts, and all. But inside the barn, under the watchful eyes of a horse who had learned to live again, Evelyn knew they had changed everything, and for the first time in years, she truly believed anything was possible. The news spread fast. Evelyn Carter and her horse were going to ride in the Spring Village Festival. For weeks, the whole county buzzed with anticipation, some out of genuine excitement, others just waiting to see if she'd fail in front of everyone. Evelyn herself could hardly believe it when she scribbled her name onto the sign-up sheet at the general store, Anna grinning by her side, neighbors craning their necks to see the list. The day of the festival dawned with blue skies, flags snapping in a warm breeze. The fairgrounds, usually so empty and sleepy, were alive with color and noise. Rides spinning, booths overflowing with pies and jams, the air sharp with the smell of popcorn and grilling meat. But at the edge of it all, the arena waited, ringed with hay bales and a grandstand full of people. From the moment she led Rusty out of the trailer, Evelyn could feel their eyes on her, the weight of all their doubts, memories of every whispered slight and taunt pressing in. Anna helped brush out Rusty's coat, hands gentle, her own nerves showing in the tight line of her mouth. "You can do this, Evelyn," she said. "You both can. Remember, it's just another ride. You're not here for them." Evelyn tried to smile, tried to ignore the crowd gathering behind the arena fence, men in cowboy hats who once bet against her, women who'd whispered about her, kids pointing and wide-eyed. She checked Rusty's girth one last time, took a steadying breath, and led him into the ring. The announcer's voice boomed from the loudspeakers. "Let's welcome our next rider, Evelyn Carter, and her horse, Rusty." A ripple of applause ran through the stands, polite but cautious, as if no one quite knew what to expect. For a split second, as she mounted, Evelyn's hands trembled. Rusty flicked an ear, feeling her nerves. "It's okay, boy," she whispered. "We've come too far to stop now." They started slow, circling the ring at a walk, the sunlight painting Rusty's coat with copper and gold. The crowd fell quiet, every eye fixed on them. Evelyn felt her own breath match Rusty's, the world shrinking to the sound of his hooves on packed earth. Then she cued him into a trot. Rusty moved forward, stronger and steadier than ever. Evelyn sat tall, her heart swelling as she remembered every night spent nursing him, every doubt, every cruel word she'd refused to let in. Each step was a statement, not just of Rusty's survival, but of her own. As they circled, a group of children, Anna's friends, cheered, their voices breaking the tension. Rusty's ears flicked back, but he kept going, trusting Evelyn. She asked for a canter, and for a moment, he hesitated, memories of pain flickering in his eyes. But then Evelyn squeezed her legs, murmuring encouragement, and Rusty surged forward, his stride smooth and powerful. The grandstand erupted. For the first time, Evelyn allowed herself to look at the faces. She saw shock, awe, and yes, pride. Even Tommy Finch and Billy Reeves stood together at the rail, jaws dropped, eyes shining. Then came the test. Evelyn steered Rusty toward a row of simple jumps set at the arena's far end. He balked at first, head tossing, but she leaned forward. Voice steady. "You can do this, Rusty. I'm right here." With a snort, Rusty gathered himself and soared over the jump. Awkward, imperfect, but clearing it. The crowd gasped, then roared. By the last lap, Evelyn was smiling, tears streaking her dusty cheeks. She let Rusty slow to a walk and waved to the stands, feeling the cheers wash over her like sunlight. When the announcer called their names, she heard real applause, no longer cautious or doubtful, but thunderous, heartfelt, a sound that echoed through every bone in her body. As she rode out of the arena, people crowded the gates, some to pat Rusty's neck, others to grab Evelyn's hand, even those who'd once mocked her. Old friends and strangers alike offered congratulations. Billy Reeves, looking sheepish, finally stepped forward. "I was wrong about you, Evelyn. About both of you. Would you show me how you did it?" Evelyn shook his hand, smiling. "Of course, Billy. Kindness works better than rocks." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Reporters from the county paper snapped photos, asking Evelyn for her story. Little kids followed her around the grounds, wanting to pet Rusty, to ask her how she turned a half-dead horse into a champion. Anna beamed with pride, fielding questions, telling anyone who'd listen about the long nights and hard days, about the faith that never wavered. Later, as dusk fell and the festival lights twinkled on, Evelyn found a quiet corner of the fairgrounds and sank into the grass, exhausted but happy. Anna joined her, leaning her head on Evelyn's shoulder. Rusty grazed nearby, wearing a ribbon someone had pinned to his bridle. "You did it," Anna whispered, voice thick with emotion. Evelyn closed her eyes, listening to the distant sounds of laughter and music. "No, we did it. All of us." The festival would be talked about for years. The day the woman everyone counted out brought a broken horse back to life and changed a whole town's mind. But for Evelyn, the real prize was the quiet pride in Rusty's eyes, the gentle touch of Anna's hand, the knowledge that together they had turned doubt into belief. As the stars shimmered overhead and the arena emptied, Evelyn promised herself she'd never again let fear decide what she could or couldn't do. She had found her redemption, not in applause or ribbons, but in the hearts she'd opened, starting with her own. After the festival, the energy in Cottonwood shifted. It was subtle at first, a lingering curiosity, a little more warmth in the greetings Evelyn received at the market, a sense that people were actually seeing her for the first time instead of just the rumors that followed her. Strangers waved from porches, kids shouted, "Hi, Evelyn," as she passed by. and the folks who once crossed the street to avoid her now found themselves stopping for a word or two. But the biggest change happened on the farm itself. Every afternoon, Rusty became the center of a new kind of crowd. Not the ones who used to gawk and whisper, but people from every part of town, from weathered ranchers to young mothers with wide-eyed toddlers. They came to see the miracle horse, but they stayed because of something deeper, a longing to learn, to believe that kindness and patience could actually make a difference. Evelyn found herself opening the gates more often. She set out old lawn chairs, turned over apple crates for the kids, and let people gather around as she worked with Rusty. It didn't take long for Anna to start dragging her friends along, and soon after, a handful of adults started showing up too. Even Billy Reeves and Tommy Finch came, hanging back at first, but inching closer with each passing day. One afternoon, a little boy named Lucas approached Evelyn, clutching a carrot. His voice was shy. "Can I feed Rusty, ma'am?" Evelyn crouched beside him, guiding his hand as Rusty took the treat gently from his palm. The boy's face lit up with joy, and his mother smiled, relief softening the lines of worry on her face. "He's never been near a horse before," she whispered. "He was scared. But you and Rusty make it look so easy." Evelyn chuckled. "Rusty used to be scared of everything, too. Sometimes all it takes is a little patience and a lot of second chances." That became the heart of her new mission. She started offering lessons, not just about horses, but about the kind of courage that comes from kindness and the strength found in persistence. Children and adults learned to brush Rusty, to approach him gently, to read his body language and listen to the quiet communication that passed between horse and human. Evelyn talked about trust, how long it took to build, how quickly it could be broken, and how it could always be mended if you were willing to try. Anna loved every moment, soaking up Evelyn's stories and passing them on to her friends. She watched as Rusty learned new things, stepping over poles, walking calmly through crowds, even letting the littlest children braid flowers into his mane. The farm became a gathering place, a kind of sanctuary where the old divisions and harsh words of the past lost their power. One Saturday, Evelyn gathered everyone under the big oak tree by the paddock. She stood with Anna and Rusty at her side, looking out at the faces, so many she once thought would never want to learn from her. "I didn't set out to teach anybody," she said, voice a little shaky. "But I think Rusty and I both needed to learn something too. That when you're kind, when you're patient, you can help others heal, and maybe heal yourself a little along the way." A silence fell, then applause broke out. Shy at first, then louder. Parents hugged their children. Even the men who used to heckle Evelyn nodded, respect finally in their eyes. But the lessons went beyond horses. Some folks in town took Evelyn's example to heart, reaching out to old friends, mending fences both real and metaphorical. Anna noticed the difference at school. Kids were quicker to help each other, slower to judge. Old Mrs. Parker, once bitter and withdrawn, started coming to the farm every Wednesday to read stories to the children. Billy Reeves began helping Evelyn with repairs, apologizing for the rocks he'd once thrown. "Didn't know any better," he admitted, "but I do now." Rusty, once the symbol of everything hopeless and broken, became a living testament to change. People brought their problems to Evelyn, struggles with family, worries about money, battles with their own tempers or fears. She listened, offering tea, advice, or just a silent shoulder to lean on. Her home, once a place of isolation, turned into a wellspring of support and inspiration. Local newspapers started writing about Evelyn's miracle, and folks from neighboring towns made the drive out to see Rusty. Some came for a quick photo, but most stayed, caught up in the warmth and acceptance that radiated from the little farm on the edge of town. Evelyn noticed the change most in Anna. The shy, uncertain girl she'd first met had grown into a confident, compassionate leader, helping the younger children and always ready to defend anyone who needed it. "You did that," Anna's mother told Evelyn one evening. "You showed her how to be brave." Evelyn shook her head. She had it in her all along. She just needed someone to believe in her. As the days passed, Evelyn realized her story wasn't just about Rusty anymore. It was about everyone who'd found the courage to reach out, to forgive, to hope. Cottonwood felt different now. More united, more open, more willing to see the best in people instead of the worst. On quiet nights, as the sun dipped behind the fields and the last of the visitors headed home, Evelyn would sit on the porch with Anna and watch Rusty graze. Sometimes the girl would ask, "Do you think things will stay like this?" Evelyn would smile, her heart full. "As long as we keep trying, Anna, as long as we remember what we learned about kindness, patience, and never giving up." Rusty would lift his head, ears flicking, and the whole world would seem to settle into a deeper, gentler peace. For Evelyn, that was the greatest lesson of all. The months after the festival blurred into one long, golden season at Cottonwood Farm. The transformation of Rusty, and just as surely, the transformation of Evelyn and the entire town, became the talk of not just Cottonwood, but neighboring counties and even distant cities. What had started as small-town gossip turned into headlines in the local paper, then stories shared on social media, until one morning a TV crew showed up at Evelyn's front gate, camera equipment glinting in the sun. At first, Evelyn hesitated. She never liked the spotlight, never cared for attention beyond her closest friends. But Anna and the others urged her on, reminding her that their story wasn't just theirs anymore. It was something bigger, something that could help people far beyond the reach of their little community. So on a warm afternoon, Evelyn stood with Rusty in the soft grass, answering questions with quiet honesty. The reporter asked, "What's the real miracle here, Evelyn? A horse that healed or a town that changed?" Evelyn looked at Rusty, then at Anna, then at the faces gathered around. People who once mocked her, now smiling, standing beside her. "The miracle," she said, her voice calm, "isn't that Rusty survived. It's that we learned how much good we can do when we stand by each other, when we choose to believe in second chances, in kindness, in hope." The interview was broadcast across the state. People wrote letters, called, even drove hours to see for themselves the place where a little faith had made such a difference. School groups arrived by the busload. Children sent drawings of Rusty, letters thanking Evelyn for showing them how to be brave. The farm was suddenly alive with laughter, questions, and the sound of old wounds healing. But for Evelyn, the most meaningful moments remained the quiet ones. She'd walk the pasture at dawn, dew soaking her boots, Rusty following at her side like a shadow. Sometimes Anna came too, and together they'd watch the mist roll across the fields, silent in the peace they'd all fought to create. Rusty never stopped changing. He grew stronger, his coat glossy, his muscles sleek and powerful beneath skin that once barely clung to bone. Where once he flinched at every sound, now he welcomed visitors, gently nudging children's hands, standing still as they braided wildflowers into his mane. He carried not just Evelyn, but Anna and the other children, patient and proud, the living symbol of what was possible when kindness met perseverance. Evelyn started to write down her lessons, at Anna's urging. She filled notebook after notebook with memories of loneliness, of fear, of all the times she almost gave up. But she always circled back to the moments that changed everything. The first time Rusty let her touch him. The night she stayed awake praying he'd make it. The day the whole town cheered for them at the festival. She wrote about patience, about faith, about forgiveness, about how it took both courage and vulnerability to open your heart, and how every small act of kindness rippled outward, changing lives you never even knew you'd touched. People began to visit not just for Rusty, but to hear Evelyn speak. She gave talks at local schools and churches, telling their story with a humility that made every listener lean in. She taught that no one was truly broken, that sometimes all it took to save someone, animal or human, was a single person who refused to give up on them. "Remember," she told a group of children one afternoon as Rusty grazed nearby, "nobody's useless, not as long as there's someone who believes in them. Real strength isn't how big you are or how loud you shout. It's how much heart you show, even when the world is against you." Cottonwood, once known for its stubborn divisions, became a town with a new reputation, one of generosity, acceptance, and unity. Neighbors who had barely spoken in years now gathered for potlucks and barn dances. Families took in stray animals. Children looked out for one another. And every so often someone new would ask Evelyn for advice, not just about horses, but about life and how to find the courage to start over. The greatest lesson, Evelyn realized, was not about changing one horse or even one town. It was about believing that change is always possible, no matter how long it takes, no matter how many setbacks. That patience and kindness could break down walls built by years of hurt and mistrust. That even those who seemed hopeless had something good inside, waiting for someone to see it. On a morning touched with spring, Evelyn walked through the dawn meadow, Rusty at her side, Anna and a group of children skipping behind. The sun crested the horizon, turning the grass to gold. Evelyn paused, breathing in the cool air, letting the beauty of the moment fill her. "We did it, Rusty," she murmured, rubbing his neck. "We showed them all what's possible." Anna ran ahead, laughing, her joy echoing across the fields. The other children followed, their laughter weaving through the mist. Evelyn stood still, heart full, and watched as the new day began, not just for her, but for everyone who'd learned from Rusty's journey. She turned, meeting the eyes of her horse, her friend, her miracle, and as they walked together into the sunlight, Evelyn knew that the story they'd written would ripple outward, touching lives she would never see, reminding the world that love, steady, stubborn, and true, could heal anything.